You're rubbing industrial waste all over your face. Believe it or not, Vaseline has kept the same ingredients since 1870. In a time where skincare had no market, one man turned a puddle of oil remains into a $2.6 billion brand used by everyone, from factory workers to Marilyn Monroe. But to do it, he would risk his reputation, savings, and even his life. So how did a man with only a chemistry background convince us all to buy petroleum leftovers?
You need some Vaseline.
But I use Vaseline.
Put a dab of Vaseline on there.
Brought you some Vaseline.
Oh, yes!
I'm just gonna take one of these.
All right.
To understand why, we gotta back up in time. It's the 1860s in Brooklyn, New York. A young chemist called Robert Chesbrough starts his career by extracting oil from whales to kerosene, a fuel used to light up candle lamps. He always dreamed of doing something bigger, but never quite knew what that was. What he did know is that this outdated industry was a sinking ship. It was a matter of time before he was out of a job. Rumors echoed about a new crude oil, said to revolutionize the industry as well as the world. Soon enough, newspaper headlines reported the discovery of petroleum in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Chesbrough knew this was the future and wanted to get in early in the oil rush, so he spent all his savings on a one-way ticket from New York to Pennsylvania. During his tour through the oil fields, Robert noticed that the pump jacks constantly got clogged with a dark, gooey substance. He learned that it would form as a drilling waste byproduct, which needed to be constantly cleaned before resuming operations. He thought nothing of it and continued his tour. But it was what happened next that caught his undivided attention. He noticed a worker rubbing their hands with the same black goo that came out of the oil pumps. Chesbrough learned that the workers added it to cuts and burns, which they claimed would suppress the pain and even help their wounds heal faster. It was known as rod wax. Robert was so fascinated that he asked to take a sample home. The workers gave him buckets of it instead, since they were going to throw it out anyway. Others saw rod wax as just a gross waste, but Chesbrough saw an opportunity to make a fortune by turning it into a commercial product. No one would buy the black gooey substance raw, so he knew he had to refine it into an appealing product while also retaining its healing properties. But when Robert began experimenting back in his lab, he came to a daunting realization. He set sail into unknown waters without a compass. Months of research led to years of experimenting, which in turn became a decade of failed prototypes. His delusional optimism had run out, acknowledging the impossible task he set upon himself. It was time to quit the project. After all, Robert was an inexperienced chemist with no business experience. If there was any potential in making money from this, surely someone else would have figured it out by now. How could he be so arrogant in thinking he could create an industry from scratch? As he was about to put his project to rest, he thought to attempt one last sample. To his surprise, it was purified into a clear, odorless jelly that wouldn't spoil while also retaining its healing properties. It was by far the best prototype he had come up with, so he went with that and packaged it into his first product, petroleum jelly. But getting people interested in his invention was a completely different game. He tried anyway and pitched his jelly to every pharmacist in town. But instead, they laughed at his face and kicked him out of their stores. After all, Robert had no track record, experience, or medical license. In a time when snake oil salesmen were common, no medical professional would ever consider using an unproven petroleum byproduct. It became clear to Chesbrough that he would need to prove his effectiveness by any means necessary. That's when he made the most risky move of all, one that would ultimately cost him his life. It involved bringing a sharp knife to his public demonstrations. In front of a horrified audience, Robert would self-inflict cuts on his skin and then apply the petroleum jelly afterwards. He returned a few days later to reveal that his wounds had healed miraculously, astonishing the spectators. He believed in his product so much that he consumed a spoonful of it a day. This guerrilla marketing strategy was growing the size of his crowds and became his primary publicity tool. To capitalize on his growing momentum, Chesbrough handed out free samples to crowds of bystanders. It didn't take long before his jelly circulated throughout New York, boosting the product's local popularity. People who couldn't afford expensive medical treatments found relief in his jelly. By 1872, demand had begun surging, so Robert established his company to start selling it commercially. There was just one more thing to do. By combining the German word Wasser with the Greek word Ilion, he renamed his product Vaseline to give it a medical-sounding name. But the real turning point would come from something else. Britain's most prestigious medical journal, The Lancet, published an article endorsing Vaseline's health benefits. This was a game changer. Overnight, the product transformed from a questionable scam to a scientifically validated treatment. Doctors began prescribing it regularly. The same pharmacists who rejected Robert offered to buy his product when they learned that people were loving it. Chesbro's company was now producing Vaseline at such an industrial scale that they were selling 1,400 jars a day. However, business was going so good that it became problematic. You see, the challenge was securing enough raw materials for Vaseline's production to meet the growing demand. All because of one man standing in the way of this supply. The same person who became the world's first billionaire by monopolizing the oil industry through his company. His name was John D. Rockefeller. Going to war with a man that powerful was not an option. Chesbro knew his company aligned with Standard Oil in many ways, so instead, he offered them part ownership of his company in exchange for access to the resources. Standard Oil agreed to the deal. With Rockefeller's backing, Chesbro secured a monopoly of the highest quality petroleum materials. Standard Oil's distribution network gave Vaseline nationwide reach, while Rockefeller's political connections also smoothed legal troubles. Vaseline leveraged this unfair advantage to become a brand recognized all over America. Now he felt truly satisfied with his dreams becoming a reality. Everything worked out the way he wanted, so in 1909, Robert announced his retirement. But what wasn't part of his plan was a storm forming behind closed doors. Only 2 years later, everyone in the oil industry would have a trapdoor opened beneath him. Standard Oil became such a large monopoly that the Supreme Court ordered it to break up into 34 separate companies. In the snap of a finger, Vaseline's production lost its supply chain. By 1919, Vaseline's production stopped entirely. Fear of unemployment spread panic amongst all the employees inside the company. Chesbro, who saw his empire crumbling, couldn't let this happen to his life's work. After pacing around his office all night looking for a solution, an ambitious plan took center stage in his mind. The next day, he attempted to raise the funds needed to keep the company afloat by offering 5,000 of its shares to the public at $100 each. It worked. The company raised enough capital to buy some time. He then used those funds to buy small oil companies, ensuring both steady returns and access to materials needed for production. This let them open up manufacturing plants, marketing departments, and more. Chesbro now controlled everything from oil wells to store shelves. No one knew it at the time, but this move would end up saving the company in time from what came next. As competitors went bankrupt, Vaseline stood standing, thanks to Chesbro's leadership. As a matter of fact, the company thrived throughout this economic catastrophe by being paid dividends from its earlier investments. However, 4 years later, Robert Chesbro passes away. Fortunately though, he left behind his legacy in great hands. Because as the economy recovered, the company received better news. World War II brought unexpected demand. The U.S. Surgeon General commissioned Vaseline to produce sterile antiseptic dressings for battlefield wounds. These military contracts kept factories operating at full capacity, even as civilian supplies became increasingly scarce. After the war, new technology like television advertising became increasingly popular. It revolutionized consumer marketing so much that Vaseline needed to quickly adapt or else get left behind.
What you doing at, Ruth?
Helping to keep my skin smooth with Vaseline Petroleum Jelly. Who needs fancy creams?
What you doing, Mommy?
Smoothing on Vaseline Petroleum Jelly. Helps protect Mary from diaper rash all night long.
Baby's skin, lips, hands too. Vaseline Petroleum Jelly.
Is doing it all.
Soon, Vaseline's medical image struggled to compete with cosmetic brands whose customers were willing to pay more for youth and glamour. On top of that, production costs rose as environmental regulations tightened, squeezing Vaseline's profit margins. As a result, they resorted to a grandmaster chess move, one that would transcend the brand to new heights. Instead of pivoting the brand entirely into the beauty industry, why not be in both? So in 1955, Vaseline merged with Pond's Extract Company, which sold beauty products. Pond's brought retail connections, while Vaseline contributed with their marketing expertise and brand recognition. Together, they formed Chesbro Pond's, which later became Unilever.
Vaseline, the Wonder Jelly. A super skin smoother, gentle makeup remover. A diaper rash preventer, dry line quencher. Vaseline.
This merger may have been the best decision they made for the brand, as it paved the way for its entry into American culture. Since the 1950s, Hollywood makeup artists have used Vaseline on A-list celebrities such as Marilyn Monroe's signature look. Since it worked so well, they kept using it on popular stars throughout the decades. But Unilever's marketing strategy walks a tightrope. With the growing movement of environmental sustainability, the brand got a lot of heat by critics, pointing out that Vaseline was a byproduct of fossil fuels. Unilever claimed they were simply recycling industrial waste, which is better for the environment. On top of that, its cost-effectiveness and versatility for customers kept it relevant. A single jar can replace most high-end moisturizers, lip balms, and highlighters, but Vaseline's meteoric resurgence with Gen Z consumers came from a new source.
It is a TikTok trend that you may have seen. It's called slugging, and influencers say it's a way to moisturize your face while you sleep.
The slugging it trend involves applying a thick layer of Vaseline over one's skincare products to seal in moisture overnight.
I'm going to explain the evidence-based benefits of slugging because people are afraid of using the most effective skincare products to date.
Take some Cetaphil healing ointment and slather it on your skin after moisturizer before bedtime.
Soon enough, the trend goes viral. TikTok, Reddit, Insta, racking up millions of views under the hashtag slugging. Not only did Vaseline's sales skyrocket because of this, but it also generated the highest reported earnings in the company's history. Vaseline even began appearing on live sporting events like the UFC, where they applied on their fighters' faces to help minimize lacerations. The product's 150-year journey proves one thing. Sometimes the most effective innovations aren't new ingredients, but old ones repackaged for changing times. But Vaseline's historical accomplishment has always been overshadowed by the success of another product. Click on this video to see why.